Welcome back from lunch. I'm Gary Bolles. Before we get started, though, I just want to do a shout out. This has become one of the favorite events for me around the year for me and our managing partner, Heidi Kleinmaus. And I just want to recognize the efforts of Alexandra and her entire team to put together this event. This is just one of the most fascinating mixes of people. So please, a round of applause for the team here, for all that they've done to be able to make this such an amazing experience. So, and I hope that with our next session, we can contribute to that experience in just a little way. So, just gonna dive right in. Let me see if this, that's not quite me. Let's try again. Are there any slides that we could bring up? We have a saying with Singularity University that AI, artificial intelligence, is easy, but AV, audiovisual, is hard. So every time humans overcome their technology, I'm always fascinated. So, all right. So our managing partner Heidi Kleinmaus and I were walking around Monastiraki Square earlier this week, and I was so thrilled to see this. I just felt this was like a harbinger of my time here in Greece. But then I looked down and realized it's a Coca-Cola advertisement. So that was not the inspiration that I was looking for. Instead, what I wanted to do is look to inspiration from so much of what we've learned about Greek history, Greek mythology, and try to apply it to ways to think about how our lives are changing, how work is changing, especially in the age of AI. And so if you like any of the images that you see, there's a lot of images, all of them generated. That's the QR code for the entire presentation. So you're welcome to sing along. And I just want to walk you through some thoughts before I bring up my amazing guests to talk about their journeys into the future of work. And let me just offer you a few thoughts. So, and by the way, I think Daniel said it's okay for me to take off my jacket, right? Didn't he say that? Yeah, okay, so I'm gonna do that. So you know the movie Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, Robert Redford, whom I look nothing like, said, "Can I move?" So that's basically my requirement for being up on stage. So I wave a magic wand, and it is the day you were born. Does anybody remember the day you were born? All right, so it's the day, well, I don't remember the day I was born, but it's the day you were born. And the nurse brings this beautiful baby to your parents and says, here is this amazing child, and oh, by the way, here is the user manual. Here's the user manual. Here's all the skills that this baby is going to develop. Here's all of the kinds of people that this baby is going to love to be around. Here's all the places in the world that this baby is going to love to live. And it's going to serve as a guide for what they will do in the worlds of learning and the worlds of labor, the world of work. Well, I didn't have one of these when I was born. I don't know if you did. But because we don't have a user manual of us, we become trial and error machines. They don't call it trial and success, they call it trial and error. You kick the football against the wall and it comes back. Well, it didn't for me. Or you start to move on a stage and you realize you're good at dance, which didn't happen for me. Or you start to sing and you realize that you have a tremendous talent with your voice, which didn't happen for me. So we're trial and error machines, and we try these things and we get reinforced by the world around us, by the people around us, and we develop talents, we develop skills. And so we all build a user manual of ourselves going through different phases of our lives. And what's happened, especially in Western economies, Western societies, is that we built these sort of arbitrary stage gates that we've called learning, education, and labor, how we work. And then in the period, what I call the period formerly known as retirement, we can live. We get to do the things we always wanted to do earlier on in our lives. And so these, my father actually wrote a book in 1976 called The 3 Boxes of Life. And he said, these are the 3 boxes. Nobody told you this. You didn't get that user manual. You didn't get this scorecard for the arc of your life, but you're going to have this big chunk of learning at the beginning, and then you're going to have this even bigger chunk of working, and then at the end, you'll get to do the things that you wish you had done when you were younger. So in the learning, and we just heard quite a bit from the earlier session about learning and the ways that we can reinvent learning. It needs a lot of reinvention. But the basic idea of how we learn and when we learn, and especially when we develop skills, the ways that we influence the world around us, we didn't have a user manual. We just have to reinforce what we think the skills we're good at are. And then there's some peculiar ways that the neuroscience of our brains work where we discount the skills that we develop often. We're sort of like icebergs. There's this little bit above the waterline, about 10% of all of our cognitive processes we're aware of, and then there's 90% of all the processing that we're doing that's below the waterline. And a lot of that processing is figuring out what our skills are and then discounting them, saying, we think everybody can sing, everybody can dance. And we lose the understanding of some of the ways that our own skills, the ways that we help to be able to influence the world around us, and especially what we feel we might be meant to do. So I'm not going to spend time on the future of learning. I want to focus instead on the future of work and the future of labor and the ways to think about this, especially in the age of AI. Has anybody here heard of AI? Artificial intelligence? It's, you know there's no such thing as AI, right? It's a marketing label. It's just a basket of technologies that Silicon Valley has thrown into one big bin and called it this marketing label of AI, when it's actually a whole range of different technologies. But it sounds really impressive and really scary if we just give it one label. So, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. But what happened back in that learning box is we had a model of learning with typically one person at the front of a room, and then a whole bunch of young minds listening to that person at the front of the room. And that's the model that we were given. That's the way that we were told we need to learn how to gather information and how to develop new skills. Well, I know that what we want to do, though, is we want to re-enchant it. And it turns out that enchantment has, I'm sorry, it's not Greek roots, it's Latin roots. So thank the Romans. Incantare. The whole idea of enchantment was to cast a spell. And what is ironic about that is that if you look at the past of work, is that actually work in the time of Aristotle was considered to be a curse. If you had to work, you were considered to be cursed by the gods. Your life had been you stepped over some line, and one or more gods got really angry at you, and you had to work. Now, that didn't apply to slaves, and it didn't apply to craftspeople. But if you had to dig a ditch or if you had to build a building, that was work, and that was a curse. And then along comes this thing called the Reformation, and this guy called Martin Luther, and he said, no, you are meant to work by the one God. That single God, he wants you to work. And then John Calvin, around the same time, said, not only does God want you to work, he wants you to work really, really hard. And then Martin Luther jumped back on and said, no, I'm going to go even higher. God wants you to find one thing you're meant to do in the world, and that's it. You're stuck with it. You pick one job, one vocation, one purpose in life, and that's it. That's all you get. And so this is, unfortunately, some of the ethos that has been baked into a lot of our Western cultures. It's called the Protestant work ethic. And we've learned that we have to work, and that work has some aspects of drudgery and of being a curse, because that's just generally the way that work works. So one of the things that my father decided years ago when he wrote other career books is he said, well, wait a minute. This whole idea of understanding what it is that your work could be, there's a variety of aspects to understand about yourself that can help you to make better decisions when you work and where you work and how you work. And what he said was, well, the way to make better decisions is to think of these things as not isolated. Just learning is what happens at the beginning of your life, and then you don't learn anymore. And in 1975, I think, he coined the phrase lifelong learning. He said lifelong learning, lifelong work, lifelong living, leisure, having fun, if we're intentional about actually blending all three of those together, we can have more fulfilling lives. And so then the question comes up, well, how do you figure all that out? It turns out that if we wave the magic wand again, there's this smart guy named Aristotle. He came up with ways to think about really hard problems, especially moral problems. He would step back and he would say, all right, how do I really understand what the dynamics are? And in this case, it's a great application. Wave a magic wand, and I could give this to each person in the room. I would want you to understand 6 different things about you and your relationship to the world of work. You'd want to know, and I say this in my book, The Next Rules of Work. What am I good at? What skills do I have? What kinds of problems do I like to solve? Where do I like to do that work? Where do I do my best work? Do I do it here in Greece on an island? Do I do it in New York? Where in the world? Where in environments do I do my best work? When do I do my best work? What time during the day? What time during the year? What is the timing? We each have our optimized cycles. Who do I do my best work with? Who helps me to be my best at work? And then how? And that's actually a W too. So here's 5 of the 6 W's, is how do we do that work? How do we like to work? How do we like to have a role in work? Am I one that leads others to work? Am I one that does my own work? So these are 5 of the 6 W's. And my hope is that for each of you, when you think now about work you've done in the past, you can put this model up against that work and think about what was the great connection? What's the Venn diagram where it overlapped? The work that I did and what I think is optimal for me. But there's a W that's missing. What about why? So it turns out there's a wonderful model that we actually can use to sort of simplify some of the basics. And each person has to find their own path. Each of us has our own journey to find out our why of work. But there's a model that I found very inspirational, which is to think of it as a series of steps, Stufen, up a ladder. And the first step is what you can get paid for. So I'm known around the world by 2 titles, Professor Gary and Uncle G. Uncle G. If you're under 25, you call me Uncle G. And I'll get a call from young people that I mentor, and they'll say, Uncle G, I just got a job. Oh, that's awesome. How much are they paying you? Dead silence. Because they forgot to ask. Because all they wanted to do was to get paid for it. Like, that's it. That's the major deliverable of the first work that you did. Remember the first rotten job that you did when you were young? Mine was, has anybody ever seen a newspaper? I used to deliver newspapers, 300 of them every morning, 5 a.m. before sleeping on the bus to school. And then somebody takes you around the shoulder and says, if you get good at this, you'll get paid better. Okay. I call these the old rules of work. This is what our parents did. This is what our grandparents did. And there was nothing wrong with it. You fed your family. You put a roof over their heads. And then along comes my father, a recovering priest, in 1970, who wrote a book called What Color is Your Parachute? And he said, wait a minute, what if you give yourself permission to also do something that you love? Now, it doesn't have to be perfect, but if you're something you're motivated to do, something that you love to do, the people you love to work around, the problems that you love to solve, the kinds of skills that you love to use, if you could give yourself permission to do that too, and you didn't have to necessarily give up being paid or paid well for it and being good at it, wouldn't that be more optimal for you? And then, again, in the old rules of work, maybe when you retired, you would work at the local food bank. You do something that the world needs. Now many of you may recognize this. This is called ikigai. Ikigai. And in Japan, especially in Okinawa, some of the longest lived people in the world, a life is not well lived unless you have all 4 of these elements in your relationship to the world of work. Now, we all have to feed our families, we all have to put a roof over their head, and sometimes all you can focus on is what you can be paid for. There's a whole bunch of the world that is all they can focus on because they live in informal economies and they don't have real jobs, real access to work. But this is considered optimal if you can understand more about your relationship to work and try to design for what you feel is best. And of course, in the old rules of work, especially if people worked in corporations or worked in large organizations, had to work up a ladder, this was a sort of a series of steps, Stufen, as I said, and many only got to step 2. Our parents and our grandparents often only got to step 2, but it's often considered by people my age and older to be a ladder that you walked up. Well, along comes young people nowadays. I don't use labels like Gen Z and Gen Y because I don't think this is a new generation. I think this is a new species. I think it's a new version of humans. And I say that with absolute love because I didn't grow up with what I call your digital distraction device. I didn't have access to the world's information. You know, that wasn't the way my life was crafted. And so this new species has a tremendously different ethos, a different set of options than I had. And by the way, these are all generated using a tool called Midjourney. And I asked Midjourney, show me a picture of 8 teenagers. And then sometimes, though, they hallucinate and it shows you 9 or 10. Or if you don't tell it to make it diverse, they all kind of look like white kids from the US. So don't trust the tools. Don't trust that marketing label of AI. It's not always accurate. But the basic premise for this new species, in many cases, they are flipping the stack. They are first asking, what can I do to make the world better? I know the world's on fire. You're telling me over and over again, the world's on fire. What can I do to make the world better? And then if I do that, I'll love it. If I love that, I'll get good at it. If I get good at it, I'll get paid for it. CEOs of companies all around the world ask me, why do kids ask me about the purpose of my company? And then if they don't like the answer, they're gone on day 2. I didn't ask about purpose. I just worked my way up that ladder. And so this is a completely different mindset about work. It's a different way of approaching work. And it's not just young people. All of us can have this kind of mindset of wanting to find that ideal mix, but especially where we can contribute to what the world needs. But those CEOs, they often, all the model that they have is their kids, and they think their kids are lazy and they're not working very hard. They think they know everything and they're always quite sure about it. Well, no, that was actually Aristotle. So I always tell people who lead organizations, if it could be said in Aristotle's time, it's the human condition. You actually did all these same things when you were a kid. You just forgot. And so what we need to do is to have more benevolence to understand that this new species has new needs and has a completely different world than you grew up in. And for people who run organizations of any kind, you actually have people with both kinds of mindsets. You're working with older people that follow the old rules of work and those who are following the next rules of work. So, all right, so that's the 6 W's, and it just so happens there's a QR code. I've got a tool that I've used for a number of years called the Aristotle Canvas. Long before I met Alexandra, I knew so much about Greek history and wisdom. And you can ask these questions for your own work. You can give this to your kids. You can give this to your coworkers and say, how do you approach those 6 W's in your life? Well, that's actually kind of a high-class opportunity because you're not going to offer that to somebody who works in the slums of Mumbai. These aren't options for them. I know we talked a lot about abundance, and Peter Diamandis, co-founder of Singularity University, has written a book on abundance. And the abundance mindset is critical. We need to have this mindset of opening the aperture. But the challenge that we have is that we do already have abundance in the world. It's just optimized for the global north. It's not evenly distributed. There's so much resource in the world, there's so much opportunity in the world, but it's not tilted towards those who need it the most. And that's one of our great opportunities, especially when we're now reshaping the future of work. So how do we do that? Let me give you a framing for that, and then I'll want to introduce you to my amazing guests. So dream with me. Dream with me. Let's dream about what a world would be if every single person had the capacity to be able to reshape their relationship to the world of work, had the capacity, the opportunity to be able to craft, to re-envision, to reimagine what their relationship with the world of work might be. And I mean, think of these as 3 doors. And you can go through any one of these doors first. But I say over and over again, these are the 3 legs of the stool as to how each of us can navigate a world of continuous exponential change. Mindset, skill set, and tool set. All right, so first let's start with tool set. Oh, no, actually, you know what? Let's start with explaining what it means. Like, what's the difference between these 3 things? Between mindset, skill set, and tool set. So I wave that magic wand again, and you and I are standing at the top of Delos. I was privileged to be part of one of the Delos expeditions several years ago, and then Heidi and I were standing at the top in the center of the Cyclades, and I have given you all of the skill set of a sailor. You have all the skills. You've sailed thousands of times before, but you look in the distance and you see storm clouds gathering, and you say, I'm not going to go. All the skill set, but none of the mindset. And so I wave the magic wand again, and I give you all the mindset of a sailor, but none of the skill set. You've never sailed before. But you look across the ocean, you say, well, I want to sail to Eleusis. How hard could that be? And you get in the boat and you figure out these things called oars. But then, of course, yes, the seas start to rise and you solve problems in real time as you're encountering them. And then eventually you arrive. This is actually where Heidi and I had breakfast this morning at Elux. You arrive in the harbor of Eleusis. And so this is the difference between mindset, skill set, and tool set. And I'm getting flashed, so I have to wrap up quickly and invite my guests. But as I'm fond of saying is we all need a 21st century mindset, 21st century skill set. Mindset eats skill set for lunch. Mindset eats skill set for lunch. If you believe you can do something, you're just as right as if you believe you can't. However, if you're on the crashing seas of the ocean and you can't see the coast around you, you need a good tool set. You need a GPS. You need a way to be able to navigate. So a tool set is what helps us to be able to leverage our mindset and our skill set. And so very, very briefly, there's a range of technologies. We can talk during the Q&A if you have questions specifically about artificial intelligence and the world that we've inherited with this new tool set. But I believe that one of the great opportunities with the new tool set is to dream, is what I call this AI-ideation, to be able to continually come up with new ideas, new approaches, new solutions to things, always understanding that the tools are very, very flawed, but it can open the aperture for opportunities that we see. But where I really want to encourage, when you think about the tools that you use to continually navigate this world and to make decisions about your own world, your own work, is to look inwardly. And so, because we are all icebergs, we don't all see what's below the waterline, the greater we can leverage the tools that give us self-knowledge, to understand our own skills, understand the kinds of problems that we can solve, the better prepared we are for a world of exponential change. So that's just way too briefly on tool set. What about skill set? Well, work is basically just 3 things. It's a problem to be solved. How do we solve problems? We perform tasks. How do we perform tasks? We have human skills. And it doesn't matter whether the problem is a song that needs to be sung in the perfect way or a dance that needs to be done in the best way possible, or it can be a problem where it's a dirty floor and we've got to figure out how we're going to clean it. We as humans, we are problem solvers. And we develop these skills, both the knowledges that we have and then the flexible skills that we can use in a range of areas. And the more we understand the skills that we love to use, the skills that we feel we're optimized to use, the better we'll be able to solve the problems of today and tomorrow. And then finally, and this is a word that's been mentioned over and over again here, is mindset. I'm sure you know the work of Dr. Carol Dweck in her book on mindset. I also would point to the work of Dr. Evian Gordon, who's a great collaborator with Heidi and me. Dr. Dweck will tell you growth is the mindset you need, and then Dr. Evian would add flexibility. The more we can help every person, young and old in the world, to develop a growth mindset of continuous development, continuous learning, and then flexibility, continuous adaptation, the more prepared we are as humans to be able to continually solve problems. So, all right, so I said at the beginning, one of my father's insights was lifelong learning, lifelong work, and lifelong living and leisure. But maybe it's not even parallel bands. Maybe if we can optimize, we can actually treat it as a Venn diagram. And if we understand how we want to continuously learn, how we want to continuously work, and how we want to enjoy life. Look at you here in this event. We're all learning from each other. Some of us, this is actually work, but we're also having a great time and enjoying ourselves. And so this is the opportunity continually to find ways to optimize, to find that ikigai, where learning and working and living are all indistinguishable from each other in the best possible model. So just before I introduce it to my guests, I just want you to think on these questions. What are the tools? What are the kinds of ways you can leverage tools to be able to make the best decisions about your own work, to be able to do your own best work? What's the skill, the kinds of skills you most love to use to be able to solve the kinds of problems that you feel you're optimized for? And then finally, what's your mindset for what's next? And I think that's a great setup for my guests. So can you run the video, please? Yes, definitely worth the applause. So please, Mimi and Amélie, please join me. Yeah, that's great. Okay, I'll sit in the middle. That's great. So you each have, wait, no, now you've got one of those, you got one of these. Like I said, AI is easy, but AV is hard. So if I wouldn't be normal if I wasn't intimidated by the amount of talent that just joined the stage. So I'll try very hard not to stutter. But I want to treat this as an opportunity to be able to learn from two amazing talents, and especially when we're talking about change and transformation. So the process that people, that's amazingly talented people are going through to be able to transform in their own lives and their own work. So Amélie, I'm going to start with you. Talk a little bit about young Amélie. Like, what was that arc to find your relationship to dance? What's the process? I was going to say what are the steps, but what's the process that you went through?
So I grew up in the countryside of France, in north of France, and basically I was a very active child. and my parents were looking for something to make me do on the afternoon, and the only availability was ballet class. So we're like, okay, go to ballet class.
Today it would be just handing you a video and saying, here, just watch the screen, right? So, but yeah.
And so I started to do ballet, and I didn't like it so much in the beginning, but I loved being on stage and telling stories through my body. So I kept going until one day the ballet teacher called my parents and like, oh, Amélie, she has abilities and there is a school where she can go to become a professional ballerina. But we had no idea. I had no idea about the Paris Opera National Ballet. I had no idea about nothing. And my parents are not artists. So I was like, it's a school where you go and you dance all day. Okay, I'm going, sounds cool. And then it's an audition process, and they select few children. And if you are chosen, you go into a boarding school, and then you start to be trained to become a professional ballerina.
And so, but that process took you away from your family. And so,
Yeah,
I mean, I'm trying to imagine when I was 8, having any of the agency or the process to be disconnected from my parents, to be in a completely different environment, and to have what must have been at least some pressure to be able to learn to dance, to learn these skills. So was that challenging, or were you just excited about that opportunity?
At first I was excited because I was a child, so everything was like a game. I thought I was doing something incredible, living far away from my parents. And then it started to become, of course, very challenging because we actually had no phones, no computer, no TV. We didn't have communication with the outside of the school world, so it was all day long practice and practice and practice.
And then the inflection point was when you were asked to join the corps, right?
Yeah. So there is a competition every year in the school to make it to the next grade. Either you are fired from the school, either you make it to the next grade. And after 6 years, if you made it until there is a competition to have and be hired in the main companies. So luckily I was hired. I got the contract at 17 and I started to work with the Paris Opera Ballet.
So yeah, I'd love to hear your journey. Like, what clearly hearing is there's a talent to be found, and what was that process for you?
Yeah, I also don't come from a family with a musical background. So my father was an engineer, my mom was a sales lady, but they loved music and they wanted for me to play an instrument very early. So I learned piano when I was 7. And of course, in the school, I sang some little things, and they thought it's a nice voice. So they gave me a lot of concerts in the end of the year in the school. But the major moment for me was the church choir in my little town that I joined when I was 16. And this was like the thing that fascinated me. And after that, I had the chance to sing my first solo in a Schubert Mass. And it went so deep for me that I decided I want to be a singer. But my parents said, are you crazy? I mean, this doesn't bring any money. Yeah. So we found this, or I insisted on that compromise that I study music, but I don't study singing. I study to be a teacher in the school for music. And I realized quite quickly that I'm not a teacher. But I finished this basic learning process, and I just continued singing in my studies. And I had the good luck to meet an amazing coloratura soprano that was teacher in my school, Silvia Gesti from Hungary. And I joined her classes, and she made it happen like boom in 2 weeks of a course that I attended. She opened all my higher register. And then I had my first audition in the Nuremberg Opera, and I immediately got the job. And since then, you know, this was just going straight all my life. Yeah, that was my start.
So what was that like, sort of, for you at the peak? I mean, it has to be a tremendous feeling to be on stage, to be able to have the response from audiences, but also there's a pressure, right? To be at your absolute peak of performance. And so what was that balance for you? Was there a balance?
You know, when you are young, you are just, like you said, it's a game. You are playing, you are fascinated. So, my first role that I learned, I was just singing it every day through. And after a week, I could do the whole opera. It's this fascination. Later, when you get older and the demands get higher, there is this pressure. But I have to actually say the most pressure I felt is the pressure from myself. Yeah, it's that you have to be perfect every evening, the same quality, and there's not so much range of allowing your feelings to be what they are. You know, if there's an evening of sadness or an evening of a bad message from somewhere, you still have to be on stage and open a world for the spectator and the listener.
Yeah, the show must go on, right?
Yeah, the show must go on. Yeah.
And how about for you? So you're on stage, but you always have your own emotions. And what was that pressure for you, or is that just opportunity?
Actually, quite like Marlis, sometimes you get to dance something that correlate with what you're feeling that day or what you need to express, and it's great. And sometimes you have to go and pretend that you are a fairy and you're so sad because something happened. So I had actually the same struggle of I have to go and pretend something that is not authentic, and then the struggle started, you know. So quite similar like to Marlis.
But it's also, you know, the good thing that we have, also you in your, to sneak into roles, to sneak into a psychology of a person, which is fantastic because in a way you can express your feelings through this psychology of a person. So the way of getting it out of your body is always there. But also you have to find those crazy moments where you have to play, for example, a Medea, and have to find in yourself the aspects of being able to kill your children, which is also, I mean, the range of emotional outlet is huge, yeah, but it's not always fitting to the moment how you feel as a human being.
But may I just say, you're right. Sometimes I would go on stage with my own like sadness or anger, and by dancing and embodying like whatever I was supposed to do, like joy, then I would become more happy. You know what I mean? So sometimes it was a different way also. The fact to play, pretend happiness ended up by making me feel happy.
The Jesuits, the priests, are taught very early on, if they ever have a crisis of faith in their religion, act as if ye had faith. Just keep going through the motions, and maybe faith will return. So it sounds like a very similar process where you just put yourself in the moment and just hope that will take over you.
I have a little story to that also. I remember one evening when I had to sing all the 4 roles of Hoffmann's Tale of Hoffmann, and I felt really terrible. My voice was gone. I didn't have high notes, and I felt like a pure failure when I was warming up. And I said to myself, okay, Marlis, you don't need to warm up today. It doesn't make sense. You just go with all your sadness and failure feelings into this performance. And then the magic happens. You know, it's like you allow yourself to be not in a good shape, to fail. And then suddenly the magic takes over and carries you through this evening in a maybe more deep way than you have planned if you are on top of your abilities.
Please, go ahead.
No, I completely agree because, thank you, Marlis, for that. It reminds me of something that a great choreographer, William Forsythe, told me. You know, when you're having 20 shows, 30 shows, and you have to show up every night, he told us, go with what you are today. If you are tired, use this tiredness to go on stage. If you're sad, use that sadness. If you're happy, or go with what you are today. And this is alchemy. This is transformation. So, okay, today I don't feel like a princess, but I'm gonna use what I'm feeling today and find a way to serve. You know, so yeah, at some point you have to be able to transform and do with what you are today.
And you become maybe a more magic princess.
Yeah, no, actually, it's more authentic, actually.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think great insight for people here. You're about to walk into a meeting. You're about to walk into a difficult conversation. You have to go with who you are today. We all have personas. We all have different ways to present ourselves, and you're used to being on stage where it's all persona, but you're channeling who you really are into that persona. So be who you are today.
It's so much about allowing yourself to be weak. You know, I think for me, this was one of my major words that I found in the last years, that we don't allow ourselves to fail or to be weak or to be ill or to not appear as expected. But I think there lies a secret, to show your real and true moment of life. Because we are resonating, it's resonance to everybody, and everybody understands and can carry you also through this. And I think we know exactly what friends mean, to be there or to be actually not there. Yeah.
Absolutely. So, but I also, part of what I hear is, you're often your own worst critic. You set this very high bar, and each of you is used to operating at the highest possible level of performance, and you're the one that is constantly, that little voice in the back of your mind is constantly saying, "Oh, you can do better. You can." So help me now. So all of us hit pivot points in our lives. We all hit times where we were doing something before, and then there's a phase shift for whatever reason. So, and each of you is going through some type of phase shift. So tell me a little bit about that. So, because what ends up happening for each of you is there's a performance period, and then there's a time where, all right, so maybe it's not performance anymore. And so what's that process? How do you go through that? How have you gone through those steps to be able to sort of incorporate that and understand that next phase for yourself?
Yeah, so in your previous talk, you were talking about meaning, and for me it was a loss of meaning. I lost the why. Why am I dancing? Why am I going on stage? I told you that I would encounter people who are like, "What's your job?" I'm like, "I'm a dancer." They're like, "No, but what is your real job?" So I felt useless. I was like, I'm dancing, I'm not saving lives. And so I had this huge crisis of real loss of meaning. I lost my why, So it was a long way to reconnect with this and find again why I was dancing. And for me, I had also to go, why are human dancing? Why dance is present in every society? I had to really go back to the fundamentals. So yeah, that was my process to find again a deeper meaning to what I was doing.
And how about you? Tell me about that inflection point for you.
I told you that it was like 30 years going very straight in my life, and I didn't question anything. Till some little creeping moments came in, it was too much demand, too much traveling, and also we're becoming older. We are women that need to slow down at a certain phase. And then I had my first burnout syndromes when I was in 2018, I think. And I was starting to question if this is still what I want to do, or does this give me joy? Still give me joy. And of course I found the joy, but I didn't find the joy anymore in the busyness, because the busyness also changed a lot after COVID, even more, and suddenly we became not personalities that have to say something and that we are listened to, but we became goods, goods that are, when they're good, and when they're not good, they are gone goods. So we became exchangeable, the business became very rough, the tone became very not very nice. And I was digesting this over many years, till the moment came one day where I woke up in the morning and my voice was gone. And I don't say the singing voice, all my voice was gone. My speaking voice was also gone. So I was waking up. And usually, you would run immediately to the doctor and get cortisone immediately but I understood, because I went with a path, I understood that this is not something from my voice, this is something from my soul. My soul wanted to tell me something. So, and because I wasn't listening before, it had to be the big cut. you know. So voice was gone. And also it took a week till the speaking voice come back. And I went, of course, to the doctors to check if the chords are okay. The chords were okay. So I knew it's my soul. Yeah. And then started a time when really I stopped singing for half a year, also with some teachers involved to overcome some concerts that I still had. But really also just shut down. Don't listen, don't hear music, don't ask yourself why this happened to me. And thank God I live in Greece. And Greece helped me so much to really connect to nature, to myself. And I understood that there's much more to life than just the high performance. Yeah, that's what I'm...
Yeah, isn't that beautiful? Yeah, please. So I was very lucky. I was kind of rudderless when I was in my younger years. So hearing about the amazing accomplishments just, again, puts me at a disadvantage. But one of the jobs I fell into was at the age of 19, I was trained as a career counselor in my father's work. And so I would talk to people in their 40s and 50s who had gone through working in certain fields and then suddenly found that they couldn't or they didn't want to, and they had enough challenges with identity. You're not going to be an accountant anymore. You're not going to be a lawyer. Now in the age of AI, we get a lot of people questioning what jobs will and won't be around. That's an identity shift. Like that's your identity is in your profession in many cases, in many countries. I can't imagine what the identity shift would be when you say, okay, I'm a dancer, but then now what am I? So how do you think about that process of reinvention or transformation, and then that sort of reconnecting to what the next step might be?
As you said, the biggest loss was the loss of identity, what you think you are, how you present yourself to the world. What do you do when you wake up? Everything was based on that identity of being a dancer for the Paris Opera. And I see, as you say, the path is a reconnection path. It's a looking back, finding the answer back in the roots. On an individual level, on my own, like why I was dancing as a child, but also on a collective level, why are we dancing as human? So it was getting rid of that identity and going back really to the roots. And also Greece helped me a lot for that. We are very lucky to be here. So yes, this process is a process of getting rid of all the beliefs you had about yourself, of the belief you had about what you want to be, how you should perform, and then reinvent, going back to the roots. That was my process. And from there, being able to build something that is more authentic, that makes more sense. But for me, it was going back, reconnecting.
Yeah, no, this is why I was talking about self-knowledge, is the more you look below the waterline, you see what helped you to get to this point, the more you can inventory what you have done and what you love to do.
Yes.
Then that's where you do the magic. So, and how about you?
Yeah, there's this thing called know thyself. Yeah, it's a Buddhist thing. And it's also, when I was taken out of this connection to being a singer, I tried to look for what else am I? Yeah, and do I have more talents? Because it was very frightening to suddenly be no one. There's no voice, there's no person on stage. Who am I if I'm in my house a normal person? Yeah? And of course, there was loss of self-worth. I didn't believe in myself. What else can I do? Stupid me, all these things, that we sometimes do when we're not functioning. So, but I thought there was the moment where I said, okay, Marlis, now you start doing what you always wanted to do. So I started making soaps, making creams, making candles, also dealing with my olive trees and making oil. I mean, I do this also a little longer, but you have more awareness to what is there else. And I did something, I did an education as an aromatherapist. And this inspired me so much because also we have to, suddenly senses involved. Yeah, I smelled lemons in another ways. Suddenly you are aware that you are not only a performer, that we have these beautiful senses. We hear, we can listen, we can see, we can taste things, to bring all this more into the everyday world. And I didn't dare in the beginning, but I dared finally the first step to buy some oils and to set up a room in my house with a massage, bed. And I started inviting people from the village and massage them with the oils and make aroma, really therapy, also if they come with problems. I started listening to myself and to the body of those. And I found out that I have maybe one more gift from God, which is that my hands somehow connect with bodies. And so I had just the first Greek lady coming to me with big problems in her belly. And we managed that she can eat again and that she can go to the toilet again. This was a 75-year-old lady, and I was so blessed because that there's suddenly trust coming, you know, and also the trust from other people give yourself trust, and then you have to give yourself trust. It's a lot of these things that are, what I wanted to say is, when you in front of a door that you think is not yours, but it attracts you, open it. Open it, go in, and you will see surprises and magic happen there.
Absolutely. So I think the clock just wound out. Do we have time for audience questions, or are we? Oh, okay. We're going to go to a workshop in just a second. So let me just sort of wrap a couple of these thoughts together. So what I hear sort of between both of you is often at these inflection points in our lives, what we most need to give ourselves is permission. What did I always want to do? What was I fascinated by? Going back to early, what was I curious about as a child? What motivated me earlier in my life? And sometimes it's just giving ourselves permission that we can take those steps, that we can reinvent ourselves, that we can re-enchant our relationship with work. Often that just starts with permission, with giving ourselves the opportunity to be able to take these chances.
Yeah.
All right, so I think we're going to transition into a workshop. Is that correct? So please thank them both, and then I think we're going to have a little bit of activity here.
I just wanted, because I think we're all agree on that, I wanted to just encourage you again to, whenever you are going through such a crisis, is it illness, is it something that you're going through in terms of transformation, what you have been, give yourself the time to reconnect and to really listen what the soul wants to tell you. We are very quick nowadays just running and functioning, but it's so important to make a break and go another direction, talk to yourself and give yourself time to that the space can open to be the new you.